Good morning. Wow, that was a rousing reception for the Monday after the daylight saving time change. What time is it? Does anybody know? I mean, it's just 9:29 or something like that. Yesterday I was confused completely all day long, but we're glad that you are not confused and that you made it this morning to Frank Talks. So I'm Mindy Tate. I'm Executive Director for Franklin Tomorrow, and we really appreciate you being here this morning. And Frank Talks is held on the second Monday of the month, every month. And we want to thank Vanderbilt University of their Office of Community, Neighborhood, and Government Relations. Lynn Maddox is here. Thank you, Lynn, for their presenting partnership to make this happen every month. We also want to thank the Enrichment Center from the Williamson County Parks and Rec Department. Carrie Hudson is in the back, and thank you, Carrie, and your staff for allowing us to be here. I can assure you that they will be happy to give you a tour this morning of this beautiful facility. I've been lucky enough to go through it and see this, and it's a wonderful, wonderful gift to Williamson County and the citizens of Franklin. And there's a wonderful facility here for your use for seniors and for families. So we want to encourage you to take a look. I even joined this morning, so I'm pretty excited to have accomplished that. If you want to have your phone out, the City of Franklin is broadcasting this live on their Facebook page, through their Facebook page, and we'll put it on our Franklin Tomorrow page as well. And then it will be rebroadcast on the city channel in the future. Now, this mic is cutting in and out, Michael, so be a little careful. Or maybe it's because I'm getting close to that one, so we'll step away from that one. But that, I think it's cutting in and out. But today we want to welcome City Administrator Eric Stuckey and Michael Walters-Young from the Finance Department. Is that right, Finance? That's what I thought. He's a financial analyst with the city to present on the National Citizens Survey. And we look forward to hearing more about our city. We work closely with the city, and we did a survey several years ago that is sort of a benchmark for this survey, and we look forward to hearing about today's results and have a chance for questions at the end. And so we look forward to that. Thank you all so much. Coffee over there. And we will turn it over to the gentleman here this morning.
Thank you, Mindy. Appreciate so much being here and appreciate the great turnout. All right, so we've got that going. So there you see it. And so here's basically the outline of what we're going to talk about today. Michael is going to give you an overview of the methodology and how this survey works. We're going to go over the survey results, talk about the specifics that we heard back. You want me to grab?
We're going to do this one.
Okay. All right. Is that better? Okay. Thank you. I thought it was me for a second. You know, I lost that hour of sleep and maybe my hearing wasn't catching up. Which, by the way, the best suggestion I saw over the weekend was, if we're going to move our clocks forward, why are we doing it on a Saturday night, Sunday morning? Why aren't we doing it on like a Friday afternoon? Now that's a powerful idea, right? I think that's something we can all get behind. So maybe we'll just do that in Franklin. I don't know. But anyway. So back to our topic at hand. And so we're going to cover that. We're going to talk about some of the specific questions that relate to Franklin Forward, which is our strategic plan. We'll also do some comparisons to the survey that Mindy referenced, that Franklin Tomorrow really was a great aid in 4 years ago in helping us do an initial survey, got a grant, worked with the Williamson County area, our Association of Realtors, to help do that. So that also provides some benchmark data for us to look at. And then we'll also compare ourselves to some national data. This is a survey that is taken by over 500 cities in 44 states across the country. Everything from a San Antonio or a Phoenix at 1.3 million people down to Arkansas City, Arkansas with 366. So that gives you a sense of how broad this same survey tool has been used across the country and gives us some important benchmarks to look at there. So we'll provide some comparison there. and then talk about how we're going to use this information to help us as we move forward. So let Michael step in here. Mindy gave somewhat of an introduction, but Michael is our manager of budget and analytics for the city of Franklin. That great-looking budget that you see that the city puts out, which is an award-winning budget, I will mention, is really Michael spearheads that, working with folks throughout our departments and working with the finance team to put that together. And Michael's been a great addition to our city team. Came here from Natick, Massachusetts about 2.5 years ago, almost 3, and has been a great addition to our team and helps put an extra emphasis across our organization on what data tells us about how we're doing and how we can continue to build a highly effective city government. So I'll hand off the mic to Michael, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Eric. And I, for one, am very, very happy that I am not preparing for a nor'easter and 15 inches of snow right now, and I'm here in Franklin, Tennessee. So we're going to take a few minutes and just explain to you the methodology. This is a survey that Eric said is used by over 500 cities and towns and counties nationwide. There are 7 separate reports that we got by working with the National Research Center in choosing the National Citizen Survey, and they are listed above you. We have a user guide to explain exactly what other reports are. There's a dashboard summary of findings, which is a quick data summary. It's about 3 pages. There's a livability report, which is the best overall summary, and when Eric reviews for you exactly what's been measured on the 3 major pillars of the community that I'm going to explain in just a second, that community livability report really kind of explains that in a nice macro level summary. Interesting reports then begin. There's a demographic subgroup comparison. So each of the respondents we have measured by age, duration of time in the community, whether or not they rent or own, gender, and race. We have supplemental web results, and I'll explain in a second. We had a scientifically valid survey that was mailed out to 3,000 households, as well as an open-ended survey that we allowed anyone to participate in over 2 weeks in late October and early November. The report of those open-ended questions, we allowed people to give one question, which was, give us your thoughts. And we got 31 pages worth of thoughts from our respondents. It is illuminative, I think would be a good way to describe it. Some of it's predictable, some of it's not, and that's why you find out more about what your people have to say. And then finally, the technical appendices. It's 50 pages that contains the raw data, the responses to every single question, the survey materials, et cetera, et cetera. All of these reports are available on our city's website. If you simply go there, you go onto the website, you click on Finance and Administration, you'll see a link to the National Citizen Survey, and you can go in and access that at any time. So as I said, the survey was conducted in 2 ways. A scientifically valid survey of households. These households were systemically chosen by the National Research Center. We worked with our GIS department to make sure that the address lists that they culled from the U.S. Postal Service fit exactly within the city limits of the city of Franklin, so only people that lived in the city received the survey. There were 3 mailings. The first one was on September 16th, 2016. There was a pre-notification postcard that was sent out. There was a second mailing with the letter and the survey actually attached, and then a third and final letter encouraging people to respond. The surveys were completed over the ensuing 7 weeks. 4% or so of the 3,000 households came back as returned to sender. The 2879 that were remaining, 1,060 households completed the survey, where there was a completion rate of 37%. Like most things we do here in Franklin, we were above average. The national average is only 26%. So the survey folks at the National Research Center were quite impressed with the participation rates and the activism within the city. In addition, like I said, we had an open-ended survey that was online. 324 surveys were received. Everything that we're going to cover in the remaining slides of this presentation are based on the scientifically valid survey, not the open-ended survey. I will say that the online survey and the mail survey were very comparable in their responses, which is what you want, certainly. So this survey in particular is designed to measure livability. Livability is defined as the sum of factors that add up to a community's quality of life. Pretty generic definition. The National Research Center has done extensive research on the 8 facets of community livability. You see those now on the screen. Every city, every town should have these 8 facets that make up a livable community: safety, mobility, natural environment, built environment, economy, recreation and wellness, education and enrichment, and community engagement. For a community to truly be livable, you want to be able to have and score highly in these 8 facets. And the questions that are asked, that we'll get to see the results from here in a minute, all focus on those 8 facets. Those 8 facets can be spun a different way, however, to create the 3 pillars of a community. There are basic, they are community characteristics, the inherent and acquired amenities and the design and opportunities that contribute to the livability of a community, governance, the services that the good folks here and my peers in the city of Franklin provide, and the level of trust that citizens have in both their elected leaders as well as those of us in the appointed ranks, and participation, the ability for you to interact with your neighbors and community amenities, what Robert Putnam of Harvard would define as social capital. But since we don't bowl alone in Franklin, we'll now take a look at what those results show. Eric.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so big picture, first question. Let's start right at the top. We asked people to rate the overall quality of life in the city of Franklin. And so we asked them, and they were given the option of excellent, good, fair, and poor. And the combined excellent and good ratings were at 97%. This is an outstanding rating compared to what we see across the other participating cities. This ranked 8th overall of all the 500 plus that take this survey. So we feel good about that. The thing I like about this question is that it doesn't have a middle ground. It doesn't have a neutral. You got to pick whether you think it's good or fair or excellent. And so the fact that 63% said excellent, 34% said good, that's encouraging. But we also, and we won't be able to get into it in the detail that we present today, but the survey incorporates a very detailed breakdown of all the various components of what we do as a city. And so there are comparatives across the board about how we did in our various areas, everything from police and fire to the folks who pick up the trash and recycling, to the streets and the maintenance that we do there, the parks, the water, all of those aspects received a rating. And we can compare those specific functions to other communities as well, which is an important dynamic. So when we look at the 8 qualities that Michael talked about before, the survey folks themselves, the National Research Center, gave us some feedback. And they said, looking at the survey as a whole, they gauged the responses that they received, both the open-ended responses and the responses that people provided. And they said, we get the 8, but here's the ones that are most important to your citizens. And they are safety and mobility. So that does not necessarily mean that there is a negative in those. I would say safety is very highly rated when you look at the results. Mobility and congestion and traffic is an area of concern for our citizens. It is probably the #1 area of concern for our citizens. So that mobility, so this is not just a whether you scored well or not. It is really just the whole of the public comments that were made or the open-ended comments, as well as the way folks responded and other elements across the board about services show that that's what our citizens care most about. All of them are important, but they care most about those. In that blue and lighter blue grade, the dark blue shows areas that we are significantly higher than the national benchmark. So specifically, economy and education and enrichment scored significantly higher. The others are all in the range of similar to the national benchmarks. Some may be a little above, but they do differentiate how we performed across the 8. So let's go on to the next one. So when we break down the community characteristic piece and talk about the Franklin as a place to live, again, a very high scoring. This is the same 97% type of rating as a place to live. And when we look at that, then there are different components of that. These bar charts along the bottom give you a sense of what makes that rating up. An overall image rating at 97%, that's again combining good and excellent. The quality of neighborhoods, 93%. A place to raise children, 97%. A place to retire, 86%. And if I remember this right, Michael may correct me on this, but actually, the younger you were, the higher you rated this. The older you were, you tended to rate it a little lower. Not significantly. It's somewhere around mid-80s to mid-90s is the change. So it's still fairly high across the board, but it's interesting that the closer you were to retirement, you maybe had a little more critical eye about that. And then finally, overall appearance, 95% in terms of comparative, and all those rate above the national norms. There's a very strong report card back. And then, again, it gives it some context. Place to live rating 13th overall compared to the national average, and 3rd in the nation in terms of the perception of our citizens around image and reputation of our community. So very strong there. All right, so the next one we talked about is governance. And so this gets at people's feeling and perception about the quality of services they receive from the city of Franklin. We had a 93% rating related to the overall quality of city services at good and excellent. That was a little different breakdown there. 36% in the excellent side, 57% in good. Still a strong rating overall. And overall, that confidence in government rated us number 8 of those 500 plus. So proud of that. That's a good thing, especially in a time where there's a lot of question about what services are delivered. And you look at the federal government didn't quite do as well, around 44% there. So we do feel that the government that's closest to the people can respond most effectively to their needs. And I think this survey shows that same perception among our citizens. So when we walk through a different breakdown of that, you look at a number of those different elements. Again, overall citizen involvement, 71%. Overall direction is kind of in that norm area, not above the way most of these other components are. So that's something we're looking at. Customer service at 90%, a strong rating, but apparently a pretty strong rating across the country too. That 90% is in the norm. So that's an important and interesting rating. Other things I particularly look at is the honesty of our government, perceived at 74% as good and excellent. The confidence in city government at 76%. Acting in the best interests of Franklin at 73%. So those all score above the norm. Obviously, there's room for improvement when I see those. So, yeah, I feel good about that. I'm encouraged when I see that compared to our peers, but I also see there's another 25% on the table. So that's something for us to continue to look at and work on. So let's see, anything else on that, Michael? We hit that. And then finally, this next piece is 82% of our citizens. Break that down. We had 87% of residents indicated that they had not reported a crime. 95% had not been a victim of a crime. That's good. We had a high rating of our public safety services overall. Police in particular, very highly rated. Fire always scores great in these surveys. If you're not in the upper 90% in these surveys, everyone I've ever seen in 24 years of doing this, it's just the way it is. Police, not so much. We're in the 90% range. And that is a very strong statement about the quality and the perception of the quality of what we do in law enforcement. So that's just something from the context of not just this survey, but in others I've seen from 20 plus years of doing this. Let's see, what else? 7 in 10 residents indicated that they had participated in the natural environment or the built environment. 2/3 talked about participating in some form of religious or spiritual activity, again, well above national benchmarks. One of the other areas that rated very highly was our special events as a community outlet and a community gathering point. I see Monique back there and Melissa back there who work a lot with that, and our parks folks who work a lot with those events, and that was extremely high rated, and I think plays into this component as well. All right, so the next one talks about how we rate the management of growth. And this is a question that we had asked in the prior survey, and we were benchmarking in our strategic plan. One of our goals was to make sure we're at least at 80% or better in terms of how folks rate our management of growth. We know that's a significant factor. It brings many opportunities to our community, but it also brings challenges. And so that's something we wanted to focus specifically on, and we asked a tailored question around the management of growth. So that was a question that was a little out of the regular norm of questions because we wanted to track it specifically and we wanted to benchmark it against the survey that was done 4 years ago. So in that rating, we had an 84% that was satisfied or somewhat satisfied. So again, a good rating, and it hit our threshold or goal, but an area where there's still room for improvement, an area we take that feedback very seriously. I think that pretty well hits it there. You'll see a lot of comments about that when you talk about the open-ended, and Michael talked about the 31 pages of comments. That's a big chunk of the comments that we see talk about managing growth and congestion and those types of questions and issues. Okay, the next question was also a tailored question that we asked, and it's even right up on the screen. It says, presently the city of Franklin and Williamson County subsidize a limited mass transit route from Spring Hill through the city of to the city of Nashville. How likely, if at all, would you be to use this transit route if the following improvements were made? So we said, okay, what would help you use transit more? It was essentially the nature of the question. And so we highlighted the highest rated elements, which was in the very likely or somewhat likely category. I would point out to you, none of these beat 50%. So that tells us something about that openness or lack of openness to using transit in our community. That's something we need to be paying attention to. One of the areas, and you'll see it later on when we talk about this, that the city did not perform particularly well in is the use of transit by our citizens compared to the benchmark. But when we look at it, what would make people most likely or more likely to use the transit service is additional pickup and drop-off locations, so more convenience. And so that's 17 and 23%, and the very likely and somewhat likely. Enhanced connections via walking and cycling, 37%. Expanded weekend service, also 37%. Expanded weekday service, 35%. Enhanced park and ride facilities, 34%. Decreased fares was 30%. So it doesn't appear that it's a cost issue. Convenience seems to be where that has the most opportunity, gauged from what we heard back from citizens. Michael, I think you're up.
So the final question we asked was the open-ended question. And we said, aside from transportation and traffic-related issues, what is the most important challenge or problem facing Franklin today? And 22% responded growth and crowding. 17% responded affordable housing. 11% said city maintenance, roads, parks, sidewalks, codes, water, etc. 11% said development. 9%, the fifth highest rating in the generic question, which started aside from transportation and traffic, was transportation and traffic. There's an entire page and a half of the open-ended survey which says traffic, 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 traffic 1 exclamation mark, traffic 3 exclamation marks. Clearly, this is also on our citizens' minds. So we wanted to take a moment as well, as Mindy mentioned, that this really is the first major full survey since the 2012 Franklin Board of Realtors survey. And we wanted to try to show you where comparisons can be made between those two surveys. They are different surveys. They're different survey animals. They were done in different ways. The 2012 survey was 400 calls made to residents. This survey was sent out to 3,000 residents in paper, and you had the choice of responding in paper or doing it online. So the physical tool that was used was different. The outreach was, 6.5 times or 7.5 times, I should say, what was done in 2012, which is something we felt good about because the actual amount that came back to us was 2.5 times the reach that we got in 2012. So we've done our best to try to compare the two surveys. Please note, these questions are asked slightly differently in many cases, and what we have tried to present you in the next several slides are places where the questions are close enough that a comparison could be made. So the first question was, are things in the city of Franklin moving in the right direction? That's how it was asked in 2012. And in 2012, the response was 82%. Well, in 2016, it was asked in a slightly different format. The question was, please rate the overall direction of the city of Franklin, excellent, good, fair, or poor. And you saw that in some of the other questions, that was the options which were given to you to respond. The numbers that rated it excellent or good in 2016 were only 73%. And again, that's one of those questions that we ask you to take with a grain of salt because it's asked in a slightly different way, but you could make some comparison. How would you describe the overall quality of life in the city? These were asked almost identically the same. In 2012, 94% rated it excellent or good. In 2016, 97% rated it excellent or good. And how would you rate the job being done by city government? In 2012, 83% rated it excellent or good, 89% rated it excellent or good in 2016. Again, something that we take great pride in. The things that we did excellently in 2012, we do more excellently, for lack of a better grammatical term, in 2016. So neighborliness, 20% rated as excellent, 27% rated as excellent in 2016. Economic opportunity and jobs, 8% rated as excellent in 2012, 19% rated as excellent in 2016. You'll see that in a moment when Eric gives you the national and comparable sized community benchmarks, just how exceptionally we rate for economic opportunity and jobs in our economy. And then the one that makes a few of us scratch our heads, we think we know it, but we leave it to you to try to figure out to explain this one. In 2012, 8% voted shopping as excellent in Franklin, and in 2016, 50% of respondents rated it excellent. You can pick your favorite shop in downtown Franklin or Cool Springs. American Girl has been getting a lot of votes. I'm partial to King's Bowl myself. But again, it's a very positive development. Things that we were doing poorly, though, in 2012 have gotten worse. Cost of living was rated 15% poor in 2012. It's rated 20% poor in 2016. Affordable housing was rated 11% poor in 2012. It's rated 35% poor in 2016. Transportation and traffic, not surprisingly, 16% poor in 2012, 29% poor in 2016, and our overall level of diversity, 8% poor in 2012, 9% poor in 2016. Taxes. The 2012 survey spent a considerable amount of time asking people about overall level of taxes. This survey asked, again, a different question, but still focused on taxes. So in 2012, citizens were asked, for the services you receive, would you say that property taxes in Franklin are too high, about right, or too low? And in 2012, 69% said that they were just about right, 20% too high, and 5% too low. In 2016, the question was phrased as follows. Please rate the following categories of Franklin government performance, the value of citizens for taxes paid to the city. 20% rated it an excellent value, 69% rated it a good value, 5% rated it a fair value, and 6% rated it a poor value. Those are different questions. but we wanted to give you a snapshot as to what was asked in 2012 and people's perceptions then, and what was asked today. We feel that they're comparable enough results and overall positive results for the city. And before I turn this back over to Eric, demographics. This was a different survey than what was taken in 2012. You can see the age curve is significantly different. This is a younger survey, a much higher 25 to 34 cohort, and a much lower 55 to 64 cohort. You can also see that the number of years lived in Franklin has changed, and the largest group that was asked is now people that have lived here only 0 to 5 years. This isn't completely surprising given the rampant growth that the city has faced. In fact, we just completed our special census.
71,374. Increased to 5,000. Here's the reality, though. We had about between 90 and 91% respond of registered addresses. So if we really extrapolate it out, it's probably about 80,000 in reality. But what we were able to count and document is a little over a 5,000 increase in just a little over 3 years, which is substantial. The good news, this will help us capture between $500,000 and $600,000 of state shared revenue per year. So we're getting more of our fair share. So thank you to everyone who took that little bit of time to fill that out or to get the word out or to share that on social media, because that was important and really makes a difference for us.
The final two demographic bars you can see up there is that there was 86% in 2012 owned their homes. Of the survey respondents in 2016, only 68%. So it's not surprising that given the high number of renters in the 2016 survey, that you skew a younger demographic and you skew a demographic that shows that they've lived in the community for a shorter period of time. The other place we see this is when we dive into the technical appendices and we look at the service-by-service rankings. We talked about police, bless you. We talked about fire. One of the other high ranks that we saw that we're very encouraged by is sanitation. Sanitation collection was rated 91% excellent or good by people who use it. That's exceptionally high for garbage collection in the country. However, recycling rated much lower. And part of the reason for that was, if you live in an apartment complex, you may not get city recycling services. So it simply is a measure of who has access to these services. The other way we look at things is virtually everyone had an opinion on streets and sanitation and traffic and, let's say, pothole maintenance. Fewer people had opinions on police and fire because they don't necessarily all use police and fire services, thankfully enough. But they do use the roads and they do use trash collection. And with that, I think we're ready for the comparables.
And before I jump into that, this just gives you a sense, and this is all available on our website, but this goes service by service, and Mike just highlighted a couple. I'm going to highlight a few more just because I want to. And I think we ought to shout out a few more of our departments that scored particularly well. I did talk about police, 96%. That's outstanding. Crime prevention, fire prevention, all rated well above the national norms. Street repair, street cleaning, street lighting, all well above. Surprisingly, snow removal, not so good, not as good. But that's not our forte. Our friends up in the north, they've got more of that as part of their repertoire of services. Sidewalk maintenance also scored quite well. Michael mentioned garbage collection. And while recycling was lower, it was still a 76% approval rating, which is quite good when you consider that we have about 60% participation across the city. Again, a very high number. You don't have everybody taking advantage of the service, so you're naturally not going to get as strong a rating there. So that's still encouraging. Storm drainage, code enforcement, economic development, recreation services. That I think we obviously share that with our friends at the county. Special events, 87%. good and excellent. So those are just a few. There's pages of this, and you can see it on the website, and that's some of the things our departments are looking at, reflecting on. Aldermen will tell you they're already hearing some of that played back to them in the budget presentations that departments are making. They are internalizing that and saying where that it provides encouragement, where that provides maybe some areas for them to look for improvement. So let's go on to the next slide. We did compare ourselves against other communities. As we've talked about, you've heard us say probably 10 times already, 500 communities do this. We wanted to break it down. This slide just gives you a breakdown of the geographical locations of those cities and then also the population breakdown of those cities. So the next slide provides it in more of, is this the overall, regardless of size? Okay, this is the national one. Make sure I'm on the right slide. So when we talk about the whole survey, the national survey, these are areas where we ranked particularly high. Overall image and reputation, third. Overall economic health of Franklin, second. Vibrant downtown commercial area, second. Shopping opportunities, ninth. Employment opportunities, first. Franklin is a place to work, 16th. Economic development, first. Again, our perception of our citizens. Where we were significantly lower, 129th on public transit. All right, let's look at the next one. Okay, so then we took it and broke it down more narrowly to our population group. Cities of 50,000 to 80,000 in population. So we wanted to look at that across the country, and we ranked first in the following areas. Overall image, Franklin is a place to retire. Economic health, vibrant downtown commercial areas, employment opportunities. Franklin is a place to work. Opportunities to participate in religious and spiritual events and activities. Opportunities to participate in social events and activities. City government being honest. City-sponsored special events. So number one in our population group in those. Very proud of that. Congratulations to our team. Okay, so what are we doing about this? This is nice to see, but it needs to be used for something, right? So we're using it. Obviously continues to provide a benchmark to us going forward about people's perceptions. We have gone through this in detail with our leadership team. Michael presented it to the whole team. Our leadership team is our department directors and other key staff across the organization. And I believe Michael's done a couple follow-ups with specific departments, and we'll be doing some more of that too, where we can drill into more of their specific data. But that's going on. We've updated the website. All those materials, including the 31 pages of open-ended comments, unedited, are there. You can see that. And then we've also integrated into our open performance website, which is performance.franklintn.gov. So you can go there and you can see all the places that we measure perception against ourselves in the strategic plan and the different performance measures that we have across the city. And that does also give you as a citizen an opportunity to go ahead and manipulate that information yourself, not just the survey information, but you can look at, if you want to look at where we spent dollars in a certain category, you can look at 5 years, 10 years, whatever you want to look at, you can work with that data yourself. So we're also integrating the findings in the budget. I talked about how departments are already talking about that. We've got various measures throughout our budget by department that will be reflective of what we heard back from citizens. What we would like to do as we continue to move forward is to do this survey every 2 years. That would be my goal. Now that's ultimately going to be the board's decision, but this is around a $25,000 to $30,000 investment probably every 2 years that would give us a chance to really benchmark those perceptions over time. I think this is a pretty good survey tool. Franklin has a tradition of doing surveys of their citizens. We used to mail out to everyone. That has become a little unrealistic for us to be able to manage as we have grown, but I think a survey of this nature still gives us a good sense. And I think as you saw when Michael broke down this demographic, we heard from a younger group, a group that may be more likely to live in rental housing as opposed to ownership housing than we might see at a typical Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting or a committee meeting, quite frankly. When I just look out in that crowd or we see people come up and talk, they probably don't reflect the demographic as fully that we heard from in this survey. And I think that's another important component of that, so that we are hearing from a broader cross-section of our community about how we're doing, how we're perceived as how we're doing, and to blend that with the data that we already know about how we respond, how we deliver the services, and when we meld that together, it gives us a more complete picture of how we're performing. I think that really concludes it. I want to thank you for your time and attention today, and we're glad to take questions from the audience about anything you heard today. Go ahead, sir. Yes. Let me make sure I got it. How, the breakdown of ownership versus rental, how reflective of that is of our real number, and then programmatically, what is the city doing in response to these elements, right? Okay, so first of all, I think that's fairly close. I think it's closer to 70-30, but it's pretty close to what the reality is of ownership versus rental. The other piece in terms of programmatic, I'd go a little broader. To me, two of the things the board is working the hardest on or working through is our investments to help address traffic and traffic flow and congestion issues. If you look at the Invest Franklin pieces, the projects that have been approved, there's a park in there and there's a fire station in there, but everything else is streets and connectivity projects. So I think that, and if you look at the projects that have been done over the last 8 years, the city has invested nearly $300 million, not just the city, state, federal dollars. You look at capital projects since 2009, nearly $300 million, almost 70% of that has been in transportation. So that is clearly a focus, clearly a priority. So I think that, to me, affirms that issue. The other element, the affordable housing component, you saw that go up threefold. The poor rating went from 11 to 35%. So that, I think, that is something the board is really working on, struggling with, quite frankly, in terms of how you work at that from a policy standpoint. I would tell you that cities our size across the country are having the exact same struggle. So I don't know that I say that there's a great answer that we've come up with, because it's a very, very difficult issue. But we're putting a lot of attention on it, and we're working it. I don't know what the decisions will be around it, because that's still being worked on. But I think it shows the efforts around transportation and the interest and focus around housing affordability is something that makes sense to have the kind of attention, and it sort of affirms the attention I think the city's been putting on it.
Mort, I'm going to bring you the mic.
Thank you. I think you hit on you spend a lot of money on roads, and you can build roads all day long, and it's not going to help the congestion. And what you talked about affordable housing, if you don't have 85% of people who work here, in a survey that was done a few years ago, live outside the city limits. That is traffic congestion. And until you address the affordable housing issue, and I've got two or three suggestions of how to do that. I'd like to do a survey here. If the city increased taxes, say 3 cents or 4 cents or 5 cents, and put it all into an incentive program for builders to build affordable housing in their development. It'd be purely incentive, and let them, the free market. Would the people how many people in this room would support a increase in taxes, 3, 4, 5 cents, to go towards addressing the affordable housing issue or workforce issue? Because if 85% of the people that work here live outside the city, you're not going to, you can build roads day and night, you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars, it's not going to do any good. And, you know, your survey also showed that people are not using public transportation. If they live in an area, people aren't going to ride a bicycle if they live 30 miles away. They're not going to get in a bus if they, you know, live 30 or 40 miles away and they hit the traffic congestion. But if people live in the city, they could take the transportation system we have now. We could increase the number of stops and increase the frequency, and that would help. But unless you have people who work here, live here. So would people please raise their hand, and would you be willing to pay taxes, extra taxes, that would go towards affordable housing? If your answer is yes, raise your hand. It looks pretty good. Maybe that should be on your next survey. Is would people? I didn't see that, and I didn't see that question asked. Is would people pay extra on their taxes if it went towards affordable housing or workforce housing? I think you need to say workforce, because affordable is such a social issue. And the fact is that transportation and housing go hand in hand. And that's the only, in my opinion, that's the only way you're going to solve that problem. Thank you.
Do you have any? Okay, I have a question. So you asked, you mentioned how the demographic, specifically related to age, changed somewhat the response overall in a kind of to a more critical response in many areas. I think you said that those older outside that large demographic tended to have a more critical response of services.
That was only about as a place to retire.
Right.
That was the only section I made that connection, because Michael shared that. I don't know that applies across service areas.
But does that relate to perhaps the experience of trying to age in place, trying to find housing that is senior appropriate, or the type of housing stock that we're able to find here in our community?
I don't know if we can make that conclusion, but
I would say that this data won't let you make that conclusion. You could draw that conclusion, but I mean, the information you have is we have the data broken out in the demographics in terms of 18 to 34, 35 to 54, and 55 and above. So we can see how people responded. And as Eric indicated, in a lot of the service areas, people were very positive regardless of age. It was an interesting note of places to retire. 96% of 18 to 34 found that Franklin was an excellent place to retire, and that number dropped 10%, but only 10%. It's still a very, very high rating. I don't know if in future surveys we'd be able to parse that out anymore, but that's what the data does present us with this survey.
To answer your question, Mindy, it's a definitive could be.
I love definitive could be.
And on Mort's question, I mean, I have to agree with him entirely that the affordable housing and the transportation issues are inextricably linked. They have something to do with each other. We have led the country in job growth over the last year. And they're not just any jobs. We're not just checking a box. These are good jobs, very good jobs. So we're proud of that. But we also, the more we can provide the different housing options that people need, from that first job to that last job and beyond in our community, the less they have to drive, the less they have to get on the highways. That does create congestion. And it generally takes 7 to 8 years to build a road. That's just the reality of what it takes to design it, to fund it, to get the right-of-way, to do all the things you have to do to deliver a road, sometimes faster, sometimes longer. CMAQ Hatcher. It is that's the kind of that's the reality. So the answer is really all of the above. We need to look at housing options. We need to look at transportation. We really need to address it on every facet that we can.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. Jay Ward Campbell. Thanks for the survey. Thanks for the information. I think it's encouraging. I think the one thing that's encouraging to me is the quality of life issue, that people think it's excellent to good. Those of you who follow me have heard me say many times, and I say it again today, in the words of Coach Jimmy Gentry, if you're in Franklin, Tennessee, you're in a good place. Thank you all for all you do.
Thank you.
One final question, Alina from Franklin District.
Thank you again for the survey. One quick question, and I, by the way, will look forward to making sure all the other school board members, I saw Robert, but I'll make sure I have some good conversation with them around the data. I saw that Franklin was 8th in the nation for quality of life. Do you have any idea, or can you tell us the other 7 that beat us in that category?
I don't think there's a city, Nirvana? I don't know. I don't know. We can look that up. We can definitely look that up. I don't know if I mentioned.
It has a beach, Eric, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, probably. That's what quality of beach did not do particularly well here. Since you mentioned education, I don't know if I mentioned that's very highly rated too. I'm trying to find the exact number, but that we obviously ask questions beyond just what the city does, and we all know that's a bedrock of the community's success too, is quality public education. I don't. You may have that, but that also scored very, very high, and something that obviously has great impact.
We don't have the other 7. What we do have in the technical appendices, starting on page 19, is where we rank overall nationally. I will say that in terms of K through 12 education, % positive, again, survey respondents rating it excellent or good was 92%, and that was good enough for 20th. Overall opportunities for education and enrichment was 87% excellent or good, and that overall ranking 23rd.
All right, thank you. Let's thank Eric and Michael for being here this morning. As they mentioned, this information is on the city website. We will post this presentation and links to that information on our website as well. We want to again thank Vanderbilt University Office of Community, Neighborhood, and Government Relations for being our presenting partner in FrankTalks, and again thank the Williamson County Parks and Rec Department and the Enrichment Center for being our host today. We've been a guinea pig for them today. This is their first event since opening just over a week ago. If you want to go on a tour of the facility, I know they'd be happy to have you do that, and it is a great gift to have this facility, and soon the new theater, community theater, will open over on Everbright in the old BGA gym, so it's a great facility as well. We've got a lot to be thankful for. We want to remind you that Frank Talks is always held on the second Monday, but we're going to try to confuse you a little bit in April, and we're going to be in the afternoon. We're going to be at 1 p.m. at West Haven Residence Center, and our speaker is going to be Professor Mark Hetherington. Mark is from Vanderbilt University. He is a professor of political science, and he is going to talk about a fixed or fluid worldview, what divides us, and we know that this is an important topic in our community. Franklin Tomorrow has committed to promoting civil discourse during this year, and this will be one of our origin discussions, a way to figure out how we are divided as a nation and down into our community, and ways we can come together. So we're very excited to have Mark with us on April, I can't remember the date, April 10th at 1 p.m. at the West Haven Residence Center. So we hope to see you there. We'd also love to see you on March 29th. The last week of this month has been proclaimed by Governor Bill Haslam as Healthier Tennessee Week. Franklin Tomorrow and our Get Fit Franklin project are working with the city of Franklin to be a pilot community. And we're going to have a walk with the mayor on March 29th at 11:30. That's a Wednesday afternoon at City Hall, 11:30. We'd love to see you there, and we'll take a little short walk and get you started. But if you haven't already, please download the Healthier Tennessee app. And we've got information about how to use that program as a wellness program for your business, small or medium-sized business or large-sized business. So we're excited about that, and we hope to see you soon, March 29th or on April 10th. Thanks so much, and go out and make it a great day.